It's funny how we adults tend to just overcomplicate things, right? Until a kid comes along and accidentally exposes the absurdity of all of it.
Yeah, that happens a lot. I mean, especially with gardening.
Exactly. So, in this deep dive into our sources today, we're looking at these two 11-year-old boys, Kesser and Steen. They're still in school, specifically taking a nature and innovation class, and they just decide to start a no-dig kitchen garden.
Right, and they didn't have some massive budget to work with either.
No, not at all. They just, dug into a dusty box in a shed, found some rusty old pruners, fixed them up, and got straight to work.
And the funny thing is that scrappy, rudimentary approach is incredibly effective. I mean, they recently went over to a neighbor's house and cleared out a massive patch of dandelions using just those basics.
Oh, yeah. And they did such a good job that Steen's dad suddenly decided he absolutely needed to buy a ride-on garden tractor. Just pure neighborhood jealousy.
The classic suburban arms race, right?
Yeah. Oh, totally. So our mission for you listening today is to look at what Kesser and Steen are doing, to discover what tools are actually necessary for a productive kitchen garden. We want to completely bypass those flashy garden center sales pitches.
Well, since the boys started by fixing up those old pruners, it really makes sense to start with cutting tools.
Yeah, you'd think a no-dig garden is entirely focused on the dirt, but managing the surface canopy is step one, and secateurs are vital.
Exactly. And not just to make the physical work easier for an 11-year-old's grip, but for biological reasons too.
Wait, really? What kind of biological reasons?
Well, if you use dull shears, you leave a jagged cut. That basically crushes the plant's vascular tissue and leaves it vulnerable to fungal pathogens.
Yikes, nobody wants that.
Right. But a clean, sharp slice seals much faster, which protects the plant's immune system.
So fixing those shed pruners was actually a critical first step for plant health, not just frugality. Just a quick word of warning to you at home. Putting unlocked secateurs in your back pocket is like carrying a loaded mousetrap in your pants.
Oh, please do not do that. Pair those with a decent pocket knife for opening soil bags and some long-handled loppers to give you leverage so your shoulders don't hurt.
Right, so the surface clearing is basically covered, and you can just gather the resulting debris with a standard rake for your compost.
Precisely. Just remember the golden rule with rakes, never ever leave it tines up on the ground.
Oh man, right, or you'll get that cartoon-style smack right in the eye.
Exactly. So, surface management is pretty straightforward. The real test of the no-dig philosophy begins when you hit the ground level.
Which actually brings me to a major point of confusion. Looking at Kesser and Steen's required tool list, they mention a spade and a pitchfork.
Yeah, I know how that sounds.
Well, I have to push back here. Why does a no-dig garden require a spade? Isn't digging in a no-dig system an absolute oxymoron?
On paper, yeah, it is a total contradiction. I mean, no-dig is all about preserving the soil's natural structure.
Right.
But there are necessary structural exceptions. Like if you're putting in an apple tree or a heavy fruit bush, you simply have to open the ground deeply enough to fit that existing root ball.
Oh, okay. So you need a spade for those one-off foundation plantings.
Exactly.
Fair enough. But then why a pitchfork? If you're already using a spade, doesn't the fork just do the exact same thing but with gaps?
Actually, no. The physics of how those two tools interact with the earth is completely different.
Really? How so?
Well, if you use a flat spade to dig a hole, especially in heavy clay soil, the blade slices and compacts the sides. You effectively create a hard, square underground box.
Ah, so when the plant's roots hit those glazed, compacted walls, they think they are still trapped in a plastic nursery pot.
Right, and they just circle back on themselves. A pitchfork, on the other hand, fractures and loosens the surrounding mineral soil without glazing the edges.
That makes perfect sense. It allows the root systems to actually break out and establish themselves in the ecosystem.
Exactly. But to be clear, for your standard everyday vegetable seedlings, true, no dig applies. You just use a trowel or a dibber, which is just a pointed stick, to gently part the top compost, drop the seed in, and let it be.
Got it. Which brings us to the most extreme form of soil disturbance, heavy machinery, like Steen's dad obsessing over a ride-on tractor.
Yeah, or, people completely obliterating their plots with rototillers every spring.
And that machinery just completely undermines the biological advantage they are trying to achieve, right?
It really does. A rototiller violently churns the earth. It rips apart the beneficial mycorrhizal fungal networks that plants rely on to share nutrients.
And doesn't it bring dormant weed seeds up to the surface light?
Totally. They hit the sun and finally germinate. The true no-dig method for clearing an area is just laying down cardboard and tarps to smother the weeds naturally.
Let the lack of sunlight do the work. But here's where Kesser and Steen show some real mechanical genius. They do use one motor, but it's an old push lawnmower.
And they aren't using it on a lawn.
Right. They run the mower over their pulled weeds, autumn leaves, and gathered seaweed. They're basically using the mower deck as a giant outdoor blender.
It is so smart. It's like they're pre-digesting the organic matter.
Yeah, by shredding it down, they drastically increase the surface area. The microbial life in their homemade compost bags can skip a whole metabolic step.
Which speeds up decomposition immensely.
Yeah.
It really is a masterclass in biological efficiency.
It really is.
These two middle schoolers understand that by working with the soil's natural mechanics, they can do far less physical labor.
And get way better results using repurposed shed tools rather than expensive heavy equipment.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder, if two 11-year-olds can successfully cultivate a highly productive garden by deliberately doing less work with old shed tools, what other unnecessarily complicated areas of your life are you over-equipping for when a no-dig approach would be far more fruitful? You know, it's funny how we adults tend to just overcomplicate things, right? Until a kid comes along and accidentally exposes the absurdity of all of it.